we have. Do we have Jonathan Keeperman?
Yeah.
Lomez. Can you hear us?
Andrew, can you hear me? I can hear you guys. How you doing?
You can hear him?
Excellent. I can hear him. I can hear him. Great to have
This is
you.
going to be a Blake Lomez
Alrighty.
back and forth.
Oh man, we were just saying. I don't know if you heard us, but we were really gushing about you, Jonathan.
Nice.
Right before the end of the first hour, we were saying there's so many topics that we wanted to hit, but we wanted to hit them with the immortal Lomez. So we were thinking the first one to hit that would be very fun is this Hassan Piker story.
We have to. The shock jock.
The shock jock. The shock jock, we're calling him now. We heard for the past year, the left needed its own Joe Rogan, but it turns out that Hassan Piker is just a shock jock. Let's see. We have this is all the video that people are reacting to. I've got a million different things here.
I can help you with this.
Let's do. So this was happening during a
84.
stream. It's clip 84.
Of all of America's much more consequential violence. Okay? It's the same reason as to why America, Kaya, please just just stop. Jesus Christ, what are you doing? You're being such a baby. It's just no, she doesn't want to come over here to see what's up. She just wants to roam the house because she got to roam the house when I was gone. And she needs to literally have the same structured, regimented. I think that clip went to Trump's big baby desk immediately. I hate everything. I hate everything.
So if it's not clear what was going on exactly there, it looks like his dog rushes over towards Hassan and he reaches and he maybe hits something or clicks something and the dog immediately bugs out. If you've had a dog, you know that greatly resembles if you have a shot collar, like to keep it from wandering off your house, which a lot of people have, to discipline your dog. But he's just using it
The invisible fence.
The invisible fence.
By the way,
but
can
he's
hear
just
again.
using it to punish the dog and make it freak out.
Lomez, I think I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay, good. I just want to make sure
perfect.
we got our tech working again. Here's my reaction to this instantly. If he's willing to do this to a dog, and use a shock collar to harm an innocent dog,
because
right?
he's annoyed that it walked over to him.
As a live stream prop, what is he willing to do in other contexts? With maybe to humans. We know that Hassan has fantasized or at least described in gruesome detail harming conservatives. So
this is a nasty person. I oppose animal cruelty in all forms. I want to say that. And I want to call on our good friends at PETA to make an example out of Hassan. I think Hassan needs a visit from the good people at PETA, buckets of paint, whatever they want to do. This, I think, is a perfect opportunity for PETA to reassert themselves into the public conscious and sort of take care of this guy who clearly has no regard for animal life. And, I mean this truthfully. It's well known that children who become sort of psychopaths, have violent ideation of various kinds, are well known to be torture animals in their youth. And I think we're seeing a familiar pattern here. The disregard for the well-being of animals very easily passes over into a disregard for the well-being of people. And so, Hassan, please, you're going to need a visit from Pamela Anderson or whoever is coming on board from PETA. I have to tell you guys something else. This morning, I'm glad we're talking about this subject. I happen to be listening to NPR. Someone's got to pay attention to what these people are doing.
Okay.
And I am nothing if not a good patriot. And so I was listening to NPR, and there was a profile interview this morning on NPR. And I kid you not, this is exact language. Hassan Piker, the left's Charlie Kirk. Okay, so I don't mean to add any additional insult.
Are you serious? I need to find this now.
I am totally serious.
This is exactly why they do not deserve your tax dollars, people, because they employ idiots that would make. Yes. And by the way, I can't tell what comparison is more insulting, Mr. Keeperman.
Yeah,
Charlie Kirk and George Floyd, or Charlie Kirk and Hassan Piker.
You know, at least Charlie and George Floyd were born on the same day. Did you know that?
No, I did.
They
not
have the
know
same
that.
birthday. Absolutely mind-blowing
That is
coincidence.
That is shocking. And well, at least there are some obvious things that you could connect a few dots. Hassan Piker, there's nothing obvious about this. And we actually wanted to hit this story because Charlie and Hassan had a debate scheduled that will never happen. Was it Dartmouth? Was it at your
Dartmouth? Yeah, it was at Dartmouth. Yep.
Yeah. And you know, we were prepping for that. We were getting ready and kind of diving into, you know, some of his ideas, if you could call them that. I think they're just pure like animal instincts, pun intended. So yeah, I mean, that's really infuriating. What? Okay, let's just play this out. What did they say?
I mean, they didn't really have an argument. It all boils down to the fact that, you know, Piker speaks to an audience of young people on the left. And their only way to sort of like understand comparisons in this regard is who is your audience, rather than what you do or what you promote or the ideas that are animating your, you know, public activism. And I mean, like either with Floyd or with Piker, it does kind of make sense. I mean, the left is offering up a kind of valorization and promotion and celebration of degeneracy and weakness and frailty. And Hassan Piker, yes, he's got like a big Twitch show, but his life consists of, and this is his own words, 7 hours a day, 7 days a week, in that room, shocking his dog apparently, and you know, spouting off on Twitch on a gamer stream. Nothing wrong with gaming. I love gaming. I'm a gamer myself. Whereas Charlie, of course, at the age of 31, has built this a massive enterprise that consists of not just his show, not just the talking, but you know, you guys have employed hundreds of people, all motivated to do
Thousands.
good. You have TP Action, TP USA, et cetera. So there's just an obvious difference between the caliber of person here.
Well, it's such an important yeah, that's the key difference. Charlie had a show, but the show was maybe 1/4 of what he did because he was the ultimate grass toucher. He actually went out. He met the people on campus, thousands upon thousands of people. He got involved in the admin, the staffing of the admin, that grind work. He spent 2 months basically living at Mar-a-Lago during the transition because he cared so much about the staffing of the admin. And you know, he's speaking at hundreds of churches, speaking at all these campuses, speaking at all these events, doing the endless work of building Turning Point. He very much lived in the real world, and that's a huge contrast to their apparent equivalent, Hassan, who lives online all day.
Well, I'll never forget that New York Times puff piece on him that said he was a progressive mind in a MAGA body. And it's, you know, like
he does lift weights apparently. Okay, we'll give
and he
him
likes guns. Okay, so he's super relevant now. Like the shallowness with which the establishment media is observing our culture is truly very shocking. And I that's why I love what you do with your publishing company. I mean, there's actually some depth that you're making happen within the intellectual right, and I think that's really important because apparently it's escaped the left now. It is completely vapid, vacuous commentary. Jonathan, 30 seconds.
Sure. It's a completely barren landscape. The only thing the left has at this point is their rejection of Donald Trump. It's all just reaction to Donald Trump. And this is the position the right used to be in, just purely reactive. We are now proactive. And Charlie was at the forefront of that. And it's our job to sort of carry that forward now.
Explore this idea that we kind of were just touching on, about the barren landscape of the intellectual left. It used to be relatively reversed. I think that's safe to say, is that the left, there was a little bit more robust discussion, debate, the depth. You could disagree with the ideas, but it was a more robust landscape, and the right was a little bit lagging behind. But now, intellectually, we represent the vanguard of, I think, interesting thought, of powerful new ideas. Why is that? How did it change? And you know, how are you playing a role in it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated picture. I mean, if I'm trying to be maximally sort of charitable, I would say that a lot of this is less so sort of the failing of the left and rather the success of the left. So what you had was a period of cultural domination for most of my adult life, most of our adult lives. And this leads to a kind of condition of complacency. They had kind of won the fight. They had taken over academia. They had taken over, the media industries of various kinds. And yeah, this just leads to a certain amount of maybe laziness. It doesn't require generating new ideas to produce new stuff because you've won and now you're enjoying the fruits of that labor. And during this period, especially over the last decade, the right, and I include you both in this, Charlie in this, myself, and a lot of people who are now coming to the fore in terms of, taking the lead intellectually for the right, we were sort of the subaltern. We were in a position of weakness, of subordination. And when you're in that position, there's a lot of freedom and a lot of space to explore new ideas and sort of find exits that otherwise, would be shrouded in sort of darkness or would be taboo or whatever else. So being in that situation of being subordinate, being outside the eye of the public allows a certain freedom of thought that is very generative. And so what we're now seeing is the right taking those ideas that were generated during that moment of subordination, and now that's seeing the light. This is producing a lot of healthy policy outcomes, a lot of the stuff around American nationalism, a lot of the stuff about around immigration, about the coherence of population within a country and the importance of that and what that means, and having sort of shared understanding of language and myth and history and where you come from. All of that and the importance of that really did come out of this ferment on the right. And so right now we're in a position to sort of strike and feed this out to the public and kind of erase some of those gains that the left had made. There's still a ton of work to do. I mean, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
No, exactly.
The left still owns academia and owns a good deal of the media infrastructure. So we're going to have to administratively take some risks and go out there and take control of some of these institutions. But from an ideas perspective, we are way out ahead.
No, and you talk about how they still own a lot of these really important institutions, one of which we saw on full display, and we're going to get to it later in the hour, what happened with Comey. The fact that he didn't get a perp walk, he got smuggled in behind the scenes. Do you think they would have done this for a conservative? Absolutely not. It's actually wildly infuriating, and we're going to touch on that later. But first, we're going to get to Katie Porter. So I first need to know, Blake, mashed potato?
So just to remind people who Katie Porter is, she's running for governor of California. I believe she's currently in the House. And so she was giving an interview with, I believe, CBS News.
Yep, Sacramento, local Sacramento.
Yeah, I think we should get the breaking things, then we'll get into the potato stuff.
I'm just so curious about this
so she was giving this interview where they just ask a total, that total softball question, like, how are you going to reach across the aisle to the people who voted for the other side
like
in the last election?
Politics 101.
Let's just play clip 87.
What do you say to the 40% of California voters who you'll need in order to win?
Let me be clear with you. I represented Orange County. I represented a purple area. I have stood on my own 2 feet and won Republican votes before. That's not something every candidate in this race can say.
So you don't
I
think
feel
you
like
need
this
to
is unnecessarily argumentative. What is your question?
The question is the same thing I asked everybody.
You have it written and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can. And what I'm saying to you is that...
Well, to those voters. Okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Okay. Thank you.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope, not like this. I'm not. Not with 7 follow-ups to every single question you ask.
Every other candidate has answered.
I don't
our
care.
follow-ups.
I don't care.
Lovely woman. You could feel the energy. So the reason I call her mashed potatoes Katie Porter is in 2023, the New York Post had some documents from, I believe, her divorce proceedings against a former husband. And her former husband accused her of throwing toys, books, and other objects at him during their marriage, and even allegedly poured scalding hot mashed potatoes on his head during a fight.
Ooh. Yeah, and I believe the person that first broke this story, the comment from one of the ex-staffers of Katie Porter said, "Just imagine what she's like when the cameras are not rolling." Ooh. All right, Lomez, your turn. What do you make of this?
You know, Katie Porter to me is the sort of apotheosis of liberal politics at this point. She's what I'd call a sort of longhouse matron. I kind of like the fact that people like her in the spotlight because it demonstrates perfectly the sort of personality type that runs Democratic politics and runs the aforementioned institutions we were talking about. It's just, you know, at all times you're surrounded by, you know, a vice principal, third grade teacher who's slapping you on the, you know, hands with a ruler for telling like a joke. During math lesson or something. And if this is the view that, you know, mainstream voters have of the Democratic Party, that's going to be great for us and for our agenda. So I support this fully. I wish Katie Porter the best. I want to see more of Katie Porter in the news.
Well, you know what strikes me is that when they can't argue their points or where they just don't feel like they owe anybody an explanation for something, they just get morally indignant. And that is a cousin to some of this, I believe, it's all related to some of the people feeling justified to do whatever they want when they disagree with somebody, whether that's political violence, whether that's moral indignation, turning off an interview. There is this sense that they don't deserve to explain themselves. They don't owe it to anybody, which is they don't deserve to be questioned. Which is a phenomenally striking moment for somebody running to be the governor of the largest state with the largest economy in the country.
Yeah, and also just you get that element where almost certainly this is a left-leaning news operation that she's interviewing with, and you'll actually, if you talk to liberals enough or just see them in their own habitat, they often have this belief that the media is right-wing. I recently saw this kook on X who said that the Washington Post is this like far-right paper now.
Oh, because of Jeff Bezos or
yeah,
whatever?
yeah, you know, just
it's no passage press, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
you know, but
Soon.
you know what's interesting is that I will say, as somebody who's had some experience in California, there's such a lack of input from conservatives now in the state that some of the journalists want to kind of get into. They want to get a piece of that action and kind of act like conservatives still play. And by the way, there's millions of amazing patriots in California. You were a professor at UC Riverside. I mean, you know this.
In fact, I've known Porter for a decade because she's from the Irvine area, which is where I taught at UC Irvine. And yeah, people forget California has more Trump voters than any other state in the country. There are millions of Trump voters in California. There are very good people there. I was kind of hoping that after the LA fires, California would sort of find its way back to at least a more conservative way of doing politics. That was in the air for a little while. I think there's some possibility of that happening. You know, California is the crown jewel of the country. That's my opinion. And it's a huge mistake for conservatives just to write it off. And it's the same problem with conservatives saying that, like, they hope Mamdani wins in New York because, you know, these coastal elites deserve what they get. Well, actually, we want to preserve the best places in this country and make them better. We don't want to see them get worse. The problem in California is multifold, but one of which is that normal middle-class people who want to raise kids, want to have families, want to have decent jobs, have left, and they're leaving en masse. And California actually has net out domestic migration. So natives are leaving more so than people coming in. So it's a state that's increasingly run by the left, by coastal liberals, quote unquote, but also masses of immigrants who just don't have the same sense of inheritance of this place that, you know, California natives have. So it's a place that I want to see rescued. And, you know, I hope one day for a reconquista of California.
Reconquista. That would be a beautiful thing.
It would be beautiful. And he's right about the scale of it. We're not talking, you know, tens of thousands. If you count just American citizens moving out of California, the net difference between people moving in and moving out, we're talking, I think at this point, over 500,000 people since COVID hit.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, well, and I can tell you, spending a lot more time in Phoenix lately, that you hear about that with even the realtors and the housing prices and things like that, because there are a lot of Californians coming here. There's a lot of Californians going to Texas, Florida, Tennessee, the Montana, Idaho. The outflow is incredible, and they seem to think that they're doing just fine because they've got illegal immigrants.
I just looked at myself. It's over 1.5 million people since COVID.
Since COVID.
Yeah, they had about net, I think, 400,000 in 1 year at one point. It was really
Yeah,
brutal.
I mean, anecdotally, the townhome complex we were living in when we had our first kid and moved out, every single family, that is every single English-speaking family with kids, moved out over the course of 2020 that we knew.
Jeez. Yeah. I mean, it's a very bad negative feedback loop. It's a cycle that fuels itself, because when one good family leaves, I can tell you, as somebody who spent time in California, that you grieve the loss of that family, and that inevitably are going to Nashville, or they're going to some, and you're just like, what am I doing holding on, right? And that psychology ends up playing quite a role. And so while we're on to California, I think we should just keep hitting Katie Porter. This is a 2022 clip where she is talking about inflation, Biden inflation, and how that just reinforces the need for abortion, because that's not a non sequitur or anything. Cut 95.
How does inflation compare to this newly important, in the sense of the Supreme Court decision pending, abortion issue? How do those two issues compare?
Well, I don't think they compare. I think they actually reinforce each other. So the fact that things like inflation can happen, and it can become more expensive to feed your kids and to fuel your car, is exactly why people need to be able to be in charge of how many mouths they're going to have to feed. So I think the fact that we're seeing this jump in expenses, that we're seeing people having to pay more in the grocery store, pay more at the pump, pay more for housing, is a reason that people are saying, I need to be able to make my own decisions about when and if to start a family. So I don't think we're going to see them. I don't think it's like about comparing them or contrasting them. I think they reinforce for people just how big of a responsibility it is to take care of a family.
Do you want any more Katie Porter jokes, or?
I mean,
or
people talk about her being kind of like a Dolores Umbridge if people have read Harry Potter, which I think we have to be kind of pro Harry Potter now, because J.K. Rowling is pretty based on important issues.
One more Katie Porter clip, Lomas, if you'll indulge us. Cut 94. This is Katie Porter calling pedophilia an identity. So that's we'll see how this plays out. 94.
This allegation of groomer and pedophile, it is alleging that a person is criminal somehow and engaged in criminal acts merely because of their identity, their sexual orientation, their gender identity.
No, Katie Porter.
LGBT, I guess.
Oh my, Katie Porter, when you sexually assault and abuse young kids, that is criminal. That's not an identity. That's an action that is evil, and they should be punished to the full extent of the law. Lomas, I want to let you chime in here.
Yeah, I find this shockingly vulgar and like despicable on every level. But as a political matter, I do think the existence and prominence of people like Katie Porter is a good thing for us. I mean, this is the opposition that we want to be arguing with in front of the public. It is just intuitively obvious which side is good versus bad, which side is deranged, which side is behaving in a rational way. So for all the faults of the right, and there are plenty of faults, and it's a kind of messy time in which we're trying to figure out how to move forward in this new environment, having people like Katie Porter be the face of the Democrat Party is a great thing for us. So I just want to, point that out. We shouldn't be too hard on it.
No, it does provide a really good foil, and you kind of remind me of that, very successful ad campaign during the 2024 run, which was, Kamala Harris is for they them, Trump is for us, for you.
I guess
us.
she's for the pedophile community.
Yeah, but
the identity.
Because that was the moment where Kamala Harris, basically, caught on camera saying, "Yeah, I'm going to fund all these trans surgeries for prisoners." Yeah, of course. It doesn't matter if they're legal or illegal. And that clip was shocking to people. I think when people see this stuff, that this is from a prominent mainstream Democrat, and it's shocking stuff. And she's just, obviously she's got a history of treating her employees very badly, her staff very badly. I got an email here from Glenn. This will be our transition. He said, "Do you plan to discuss the summons afforded to Comey instead of an arrest warrant that allowed the snake to slither into the courthouse and out unseen without being perp walked into the front door in handcuffs and leg restraints like they did with Bannon and Navarro?"
So I wanted to have the first response to this and see if you guys disagree, because we discussed this when he was first indicted on our Thought Crime show, and I kind of thought, I'm actually okay with not having the public perp walk and like making a big show out of the out of a mugshot, because I think that's how you get into bad patterns. Look at what happened to the Democrats with Donald Trump. They were obsessed with perp walk Donald Trump, get the mugshot of Donald Trump. And now we know, 2 years later, that was a huge mistake. That made Trump stronger, that they were fixated on these superficial things. Because perp walking someone is not convicting them. It is not imprisoning them. It is not politically disempowering them. It is a superficial thing.
Yeah.
And if you're making a case against Comey that he committed crimes, the important thing is to make sure the case is strong, that you can get a conviction of it. The important thing is not getting a perp walk of him. That is a superficial thing. So I'm going to disagree with people a bit on that.
No, you've been consistent on this. You are demanding real accountability, real results. You want a real sentence. If we're going to bring this, it needs to be
if your
watertight.
case against Comey is strong, it shouldn't need a perp walk to make its point.
Jonathan Kieferman, your take.
Yeah, I mean, I'm persuaded by this. I think Blake's right. And I think this speaks to general tension that, the Trump administration is trying to deal with, which is on the one hand, you want to signal to your base that you're doing something and you're treating this asymmetry in power that, we've seen over the last decade or at least 5 years. You're treating that seriously and you're taking steps and making moves to rectify that asymmetry. The base wants to see this. They want to see Comey being perp walked. On the other hand, the general public doesn't want to, see anything that looks abnormal or that looks too vindictive. They want normal politics. They want sober, steady, normal politics. They want real justice. They don't just want the symbols. They don't just want the ostentatious display. And so I think Blake is right. A little bit of forbearance here, a little bit of prudence from an optics perspective, which is the calculation that matters here. This is about optics. Is well within what the Trump admin should do. Don't make a martyr out of this guy. Remember what happened with Trump with those mugshots? That became this like galvanizing moment for people on the right. It was used as a way to roil the base. We don't want to give them photographs and these events to galvanize them. They really have nothing right now. They have Katie Porter. Okay,
who
leave
sold
them with Katie Porter?
Who sold more T-shirts with Trump's mugshot on it? The left or Turning Point?
Yep.
Well, I don't know that we did.
I think, didn't we have the Never Surrender
we-
shirts? Maybe
we-
that was someone else.
No, the Charlie Kirk show did.
Okay.
But I don't think Turning
Okay.
Point
Oh yeah,
does
the
that.
separate organization.
Yes.
Sorry, shouldn't mix them up. But
No, and listen, I am persuaded by this a little bit, but I also do want to give some credence to the base that's, I think justifiably enraged at this double standard that we've all been forced to live through. I mean, Steve Bannon, who, was on Real America's Voice before this show, was paraded around, and the indignities that he was forced to suffer are extreme. And I understand people getting incredibly pissed off about that. I understand people getting upset about what happened to Peter Navarro. I understand the indignities that lawyers that defended Trump or that helped him in the after 2020 that they've been forced to suffer through. So I completely understand the impulse. And I think, it's kind of what Trump would say, though. The best vengeance is success. So if we want to get back at what we have been forced to suffer through, to your point, the success of an indictment, meaning that Comey actually gets punished for his crimes, his alleged crimes, that he actually would serve time in jail, serve time in prison. That is success in these instances is really critical. And by the way, all of these stories about that Tulsi Gabbard helped reveal, and some of this the shenanigans that were going on from it looks like the highest level with Obama and Clapper and Brennan to essentially tie Trump into this to the Russiagate scandal and basically rob 2 years of his presidential campaign. We haven't taken our eye off that ball either. So and Comey was right in the center of that. And they go ahead, Blake.
we have late breaking Katie Porter takes from our viewers. Susan has a super important question. Did Katie Porter ever sit on her poor ex-husband?
Oh, Blake, you are just you know what this is where Charlie would rein him in, and so it's like left to me, and Charlie would go, I don't know, like this could
Send me a sign, Charlie.
somebody-
if you don't like it,
yeah,
send me a
Neff
sign.
Unleashed. You want Blake Neff unleashed.
yeah, Blake. Yeah,
Put me on
go
a shot
off,
collar.
Blake. Yeah.
Shot collar.
I'm gonna have to get your shot collar, and you won't be an innocent in this because you have a Okay, thank you, Susan, for helping Blake get to the point. So we have another email from Jean, I believe. Based on these clips you showed, Katie Porter reminds me of the woman in Broward County who have run for office and who we, the local GOP, defeated with the right candidate. These are women who spout these ideas, yet they portray themselves as moms and representatives of women's issues. That's a really very key point. They do. That's what I'm saying. They present themselves as this moderate, sensible person, and then you actually, the mask off moments really, I think, tell a lot about somebody's underlying ideology, and I think that's very, very true with Katie Porter. So okay, Ramthan, I guess, says why, or this is Sana. Sorry, why was he given a summons rather than an arrest warrant?
Well, so that's kind of what I'm getting at. He responded to the summons. He went in. He entered his plea
Secretly.
And okay, but we know what the plea was already, and we are conservatives. We actually want to uphold the system, and so you do want, if a person is going to come in and respect the system, we don't need to kick in the door and drag James Comey in. And if you're going for that, I think you're too focused on the TV show of what's going on, and you want to avoid that temptation. It is a bad impulse, in my opinion.
You do want to avoid making martyrs out of people that do not deserve the label, and I think that's ultimately where I landed with Kimmel. I was enraged at first, but I also want his show just to go away because it has bad ratings and it's costing the network too much money, and it will go out with a whimper. Is much better for some of these people.
There's a lot of short-term emotional satisfaction from doing sort of performatively over the top or even cruel things to your opponents. And I think, again, that's why I point towards the Trump stuff, because there was a lot of that with Trump and his supporters. And I think that's how they squandered a lot of their political advantage during the Biden years, threw it away, and they got Trump reelected. People saw it, and it was very off-putting. And we want to make sure we don't go too far. You want justice, of course. Like, we want to, for example, deport illegal immigrants, but you don't want to do performatively over-the-top stuff with it necessarily.
You don't want to give the left tools to sort of attack you and undermine.
Don't undo yourself on something that ultimately doesn't matter.
Yeah, Leandra here, the way Team Blake Neff Unleashed. The way Tucker advocated for Blake, I want Blake Neff Unleashed, waiting for his super based takes on X.
We're going to have unlimited potato-related takes.
We need 7-hour Blake Neff streams on Twitch.
People are going to regret that
Blake
one.
Neff Unleashed.
7 hours of me ranting about the Roman Empire.
So this is from Susan. She goes, because we just read her email. She goes, my husband said you would never read that about Katie Porter. LOL. No, we got you. We are committed to the email. freedom@charliekirk.com. Please keep sending them. Lomez, I want to give you the opportunity just to kind of reflect on Charlie, because we haven't gone there yet. Because I think I was planning on leading with it, and then my headset, I had an issue, and we just got into the news. But I want, the floor is yours. I mean.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is tough. I mean, it's still raw. I know you guys, it's raw for you guys too. And it's still taking me, like, I'm in these waves thinking about the significance of it from a sort of like political, cultural standpoint. And then there's also just like the personal element to it. And, separating these two things out and trying to think about them rationally has been really difficult. And, you guys know, both of you know, sort of like privately, we've had a lot of conversations, before everything happened, how much I respected Charlie. And I really felt like Charlie was at the center of what was going to happen next on the right. And this was pretty obvious. This is not a novel take. It's also not hyperbole. We're seeing, even in his brief absence here, things start to kind of fray without his presence in the middle, sort of binding all of these different factions together. And he was someone who could speak to everybody. Everybody could trust him. I think one thing we're seeing too, and even with some of the, quote unquote controversies, like with the text messages that were revealed yesterday, not getting into, the specifics of what was said, but what was revealed to me was Charlie was a loyal friend. And loyalty really is the first principle of any political movement, of any political group, and of any political act. You have to be able to demonstrate loyalty, and loyalty transcends these kinds of ideological differences and even differences that really matter, differences that are meaningful, being able to talk to people, being able to talk to allies, people who are on your side across those differences, and mediate between different parties who have disagreements on different issues. Charlie really was that guy at the center of the right. And in his absence, it remains to be seen what happens without him. I worry about it a little bit. I don't see any obvious replacement. You can't replace someone like him. The best we can do is all pitch in a little bit and try to model ourselves on Charlie's example. I've said this before previously on a podcast, but I'm 10 years older than Charlie, but in many, many, many ways, Charlie was a better man than me. And I want to be more like that. And I think people should start thinking, how can I be more like that? Not necessarily in terms of the beliefs, the ideology, although that's good too, but how can I act as a centering force for this coalition? How can I push towards more agreement, more positive action, more policy wins, rather than how can I better serve my own ego? And a lot of people think about the latter. They think, how can I serve my own ego? Charlie never did that. And I think a lot of us could take a very important lesson from that. And I implore people to think about it in those terms. The other thing on a personal level, he's a man with a family and a wife and kids. And it's very similar to, my own circumstances in many ways. And it's a tragic, tragic loss for people who know him and his family. And I do want to say, I have to give you guys credit
1 second.
For what you've done in his absence.
For those on radio that didn't hear it, you were just talking about what Charlie meant to you, what he meant to the movement. And so please, I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, it's hard to wrap your arms around what a big loss this was. And I was just moving into the personal tragedy of it. And, we have to remember here too, that like the people you see on the screens, the people talking, these are just people. These are just guys with ideas and a vision for the country. And the thing I would like for us to do is remember Charlie as a model. And I want us to think about from, again, a policy standpoint, what we might be able to do to memorialize him in a more permanent and durable way so that he maintains this central focus as a kind of model for how the right ought to be in the future.
Yeah. And, for those of us that are here, trying to make much of his legacy and remember his life and to celebrate all the amazing things that he's done, I can tell you it's the most overwhelming thing. I had a friend who looked at me kind of in the midst of some of this last week, and he said, "We picked a hard job," and he's like, and in Charlie's absence, it just got infinitely more difficult. And I was like, "Yeah, man, that's a massive understatement." But I do the real legacy of Charlie is one of faith in Jesus, faith in God, faith in this country. And so I know that God doesn't call us to anything that he's not going to equip us to accomplish. I know that it is a tremendous loss, but I also know that God is with us. I've never in my life felt the prayers of strangers. I feel them daily. Every day I get so many people texting, "We're praying for you. We can't stop praying for you. We can't stop thinking about Charlie." And so I know that God's plans are bigger than ours. I know that he has a vision for this country. There's a harvest that Charlie has helped ignite in this country. And my prayer is that we would not let any of the controversies overshadow his legacy, his true intent. And I pray that we would not let it divide the coalition and the movement, or that it would come back and hurt Turning Point, because Charlie loved Turning Point with all of his heart.
Just before we came back, Jonathan mentioned Charlie's humility. And actually that was such an important part of it, that Charlie got so big, yet he was never a megalomaniac. He was never a narcissist. Every time good things happened, he'd say, all on God, put it all in God's hands. And that was so important to his growth, his staying power, and why his movement was so positively oriented, I believe. And I think that's one of the most underrated aspects of how his faith guided his actions, that the success never went to his head, because the success was always something given to him from above.
Yeah. Jonathan Keeperman Lomez on X. The last 2 minutes, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, aside from just the humility, which obviously is incredibly grounding and allows people to sort of persevere and not lose sight, not lose perspective. Charlie was also a positive force, and this is the other thing that I see, creeping in a little bit to the right, going forward with this kind of embittered, resentful tone, where everything is sort of steeped in a kind of sense of vindictiveness and revenge and a sense of hurt that needs to be accounted for, a sense of grievance on the right. And I don't think the right should have that as the prevailing attitude. They should take instead the example of Charlie, again, which was this sort of positive tone, a positive vision, a sort of trust in the good to prevail over the bad. That is often conflated and confused for weakness. It is not weakness. There is plenty of strength in being positive, and it's also not naivety. Charlie was not naive. And so you can be positive, you can have a positive vision without suffering from some of these other deficits. And again, I just hope that as a movement, as a political coalition, we can take some of those traits on board.
Yeah, I mean, two of the guiding principles of Turning Point from the very beginning were grassroots humility and being a happy warrior. And that's how I would sum up kind of what we're talking about. These are guiding principles that are on the side of the walls in the offices. And grassroots humility. Always be willing to get your hands dirty, to lend a hand, to do the thing that is maybe not glorious or illustrious, or you're not going to get your name on a marquee, but to do it anyways because it's the right thing. Register voters, hand out clipboards and tennis shoes work, and then happy warrior. And I think that Charlie exemplified that because he always had that smile on his face. It was electric, it was magnetic, and super. It was just super inviting to so many people. Jonathan Keeperman Lomas, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.